I'm Melanie Johnson, along with my co-host Jen Foster. We are both 13-time best-selling authors. We've published over 2,500 books and made all of our authors #1 bestsellers. We own Elite Online Publishing. If you want to become a best-selling author, look us up at eliteonlinepublishing.com. Now, welcome to the podcast that shares secrets from top industry experts that show you how to get lasting success and results. This is the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hi, it's Melanie Johnson with Elite Online Publishing. We're here for another fabulous podcast. As always, we're going to learn great things today. Jen, how are you doing?
It's a great day. I'm really excited about learning about all of what we're going to learn today from Naomi Kent.
All right, so let me give you a little sneak peek before we get started. Have you ever thought of being on a board for a company? Have you ever thought of transitioning your career to be a board member or adding it to your career? All you need is 1 or 2 days a month to do this. And I mean, I would have no idea where to start. So today, Naomi's going to walk us through exactly what you need to do, how you need to do it. And by the way, her company helps you do that every step of the way. So first of all, though, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, hit that subscribe button, and share it to everyone that you know, especially if you think of someone that is in need of this. I have a multitude of friends who are in their 50s who are transitioning. They either got let go from their jobs because of COVID or something has happened, and they would be perfect people to become board members. So we're speaking to you and a lot of other people. Naomi, thanks for joining us today. We're really happy to have you.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. And hi, Jen. Thank you very much to you too.
Yeah, thanks, Naomi, for being here. So tell us a little bit how you got into this industry, kind of where you came from in your background, and how you got into helping people to get on board members.
Yeah, so I've been in the board space for just over 20 years, working with data around board members and the structure of their boards. And then later on working for organizations that have been improving and trying to improve the minorities on boards and women on boards. And then more recently, I joined In Touch Networks, which is an organization that prepares and positions executives and retired executives for board role service. And so I'm very passionate about this industry. First of all, just a little bit of background. When I first started working in this space, I was working in a company called BoardX that analyzed board data. And what I noticed was in the trends, essentially, was that there wasn't a lot of female representation on boards. There wasn't a lot of minority representation on boards. And this just didn't add up to me. You know, the businesses were global. They had consumers from all over the world. You know, why was it that this was an issue at the board level? And then when you started to look, there were a few things at play. One main part of this was that there wasn't a lot of movement on boards. So people stayed on the board for many years and didn't really roll off the board. So this was sort of one area that was pretty clear from the data and from what I was seeing. And then the second part was that recruitment at the board level was done either through a large recruitment business, or which is fairly costly for businesses, or it was done through word of mouth. So referrals, people would frequently ask the board, hey, you know, do you know anyone? We're hiring a board member next year. So what sort of tended to happen was, I don't think people went out to try and create a group of board members that were not diverse, but just naturally they tended to hire people that they knew, which were like them. They had the same wallet size and they looked like them and sounded like them and came from the same schools. So we find ourselves today, however, and I started this sort of the year 2002, but we find ourselves today in a very different environment. And so I'm really excited about the change that is going on right now and all of the positive change that's happening. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well.
So let me ask you, we're talking about women and minorities on boards that you had mentioned that this seems to be in low numbers. So 2 questions. Are you seeing that there's a demand for that now with the way the culture has changed over the last 24 months? And so are companies looking for minorities? Are they looking for women to be more diverse? And the other thing is, you know, being a woman executive, starting from scratch, what does just a woman or a man, what are the first steps they should be doing to become a board member? Where do you start?
Yeah, so to sort of tackle the first part, which is, why is change happening? What have I seen? Well, first of all, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I think businesses started to see in the data that diverse boards overperformed the less diverse boards. And that was not just due to female representation or minorities, but actually a diverse group of people. So we don't want, a group of finance people on a board. We don't just want a group of legal experts on a board. We're really looking for somebody who brings a different perspective. So somebody from different, we call them subject matter experts. And so that started to happen up to sort of 10 years ago. People started to recruit quite unusual types of people to their boards that otherwise in the previous years it would have been just CEOs and just CFOs.
Mhm.
Sonos, for example, just recently hired the chief product officer from Microsoft to join. So, they're expanding. That would never have happened 10 to 20 years ago. So definitely things are changing. And then in addition to that, some very large investment firms started to speak up. So Goldman Sachs, BlackRock started to say, we may not invest in your business if you don't have a diverse board, because we understand the value of having a diverse board. So that started to shift and companies started to wake up and go, oh, wait, this is a problem.
Yeah.
And then finally, we had countries in Europe, and then states in the United States, California leading the way, that actually started to put some rules around how many women you had to have on your board. And that started to change the dynamic of things too. And actually, some other states have definitely started to make moves, not necessarily mandating it, but definitely saying, hey, this is a recommendation. We're going to be watching you to see how many women you have on your board. And now minorities has become a much more of a conversation than anything before. Both the Hispanic community are working very hard to increase the numbers. And there's a new organization just launched called the Board Challenge, which is working toward bringing more African Americans onto boards. And so really, I think the movement has really started to heat up recently. And so what does that mean for everybody out there? Well, there's a lot of different things, not just minorities and women, but this subject matter expert is now well sought after at the board level. Again, you don't just have to be a CEO to get on a board. So it's really exciting times, and it's opening up a lot of opportunities for people. Your question, where do you start? Well, the first thing is you need to decide, is this a channel for you? Is this an area of development that you would like to go down? And one of the ways that you can sort of find that out for yourself is to really explore the board space. What is an effective board member? What happens on a board? Now, there are plenty of learning and development and videos out there. You can even just, if you want to just Google a few things, right, to find out what is a board member? What's the role of a board? And really decide, is that the role for you? It's very much an advisory role. It's not a doer. You're not a doer anymore, right? So there's a shift there and a transition that you need to go through, where you're advising the CEO, no longer being the CEO, essentially. And then the other thing you want to start thinking about is what is the right direction for you? Now, starting out, even if you've got 30 years experience, starting out in the board space, it's progression. You've got to start somewhere at the bottom and work your way up, whatever that bottom and up looks like for you, depending on who you are. So, my recommendation is always think about what's the sort of low hanging fruit. What are the people around you that sit on boards? Go talk to them, go ask them what life's like on a board. And then also, if you have people who sit on industry boards, like the American Marketing Association or the Engineering Association, every single industry will have its association boards. And sometimes that can even elevate your own personal brand. So, 2 in 1, right? Charities are crying out for great people to join their boards, whether it's fundraising or actually being part of the team that help build the nonprofit. So those are great places to start too. And then there are advisory boards, very different from a board of directors. You have less responsibility, essentially, what we call fiduciary responsibilities at the advisory board level. So it can be quite easy to jump in, jump out. So quick, just recap, I'd say, find out what you want to do, whether you want to do it or not. And then look around you. There are people around you that that sit on boards, and I would start exploring some options there with them.
Awesome. So how would you know like if you're the right fit or like if it's the right timing for you? How much time does it take to be on a board and how do you know like that you would be a good fit if you're just barely starting new?
You've hit on a really good point, which a lot of people tend to forget, which is, how much time is this going to be? And if you have a very demanding job, plus a family, plus all these other things going on, is it something you can even take on? So I would absolutely ask myself, do I have the time and the dedication for this? And then the next thought would be, what kind of a board member am I? Right? Where would be my best fit? There are some things I would recommend. I'd recommend working with perhaps a coach to discover what those elements are that you bring to a board. And then I'd also start thinking about, if I do have the time and I can commit the time, when you do come across an opportunity, you still want to ask the question, what's expected of a board member here at XYZ firm? What's the demands of the board members? How much time, right, am I expected to commit? And then just look at that and see if it's the right fit for you. We talked before about some of these pro bono opportunities that can be a great stepping stone into the corporate space. Make sure it's really close to your heart. Make sure these causes are important to you. You'll be more likely and inclined to want to spend time on them versus the ones that perhaps aren't as important. So, and if you're looking at the corporate space, well, I mean, it's corporate culture. The people are really important, just like you would be evaluating and doing your due diligence on a company that you're going to be an executive of. You want to sort of do the same thing at the board level. Don't just accept the first thing that comes along because they offer you money or equity, right? Make sure that it is the right fit. And another thing to be considered is, or to consider, is that when you join a board of directors, you serve a term, right? It could be a year, 2 years, 3 years. So once you're in, not easy to get out. Those are terms that you have to achieve and you have to set in and you have to agree to. So you want to make sure that this is the right fit. Meet the other board members, ask them questions, Google the company, do all the research, right, to make sure that it's the right fit for you. But, before that even happens, there's an element of who am I and what am I going to bring to a board? Where's my best fit, right?
Yeah. So I've had a company reach out to me. I think it was different than yours about, hey, do you want to be a board member? We can help you do this. Sign up for our thing. How do you disseminate? So let's say you're ready to make that step. You've done some of the things you've said, but like I wouldn't know how to solicit to get on a board member. Like how do I do that? And if you have someone help you or hire a team or a company to help you, how do you decide which team? What should I be looking for when I'm hiring a coach or someone to get me onto that board?
Yeah, so there's 3 ways that you're going to get onto a board. The first is through a recruiter. So someone that you may know that's already recruiting. So my advice would be, if you're really serious about becoming a corporate board member, reach out to those recruiters that you know and let them know that you're looking for a board role. There's nothing worse than sitting there knowing yourself that you're looking for a board member, but not actually telling anybody else. So be vocal, be out there with it. The second way that you'll get on a board is through an online application. Possibly one of the hardest ways, because you are, well, not the hardest ways, but it can be tough. You're just a piece of paper at that point. Your resume or your bio or whatever it is that you have is all that is representing you. The third and probably the easiest way is through your networks and referrals. So people that have worked with you, people that consider you to be a trustworthy individual, that someone that can, come onto a board and work well in a small team, they vouch for you. That's probably the easiest way. So again, the first step I would do is to look at your network and leverage LinkedIn, leverage the people around you, talk to whoever, and say, hey, have you ever been on a board? Do you know the board space? I'm looking to get into it. What's my next step? Now here at In Touch, what we do is because we prepare and position people for board service, we actually look at the complete sort of, let's say, journey. So it frequently starts with this: what's your board narrative? What's your personal brand? What do you bring to a board? And that can be discovered through some of our learning and development, but frequently it's discovered through working with one of our resume experts on creating a board profile. A board profile is just, if you want to call it a board resume or a board bio, it's basically, who am I as a board member? And once you have that piece of paper, you're now over a huge hurdle, which is, what am I doing? Where am I going? And now anytime you have that conversation with your network, someone you meet, your dentist, could be anybody, you've got that, board profile, you've got that narrative that you can say, hey, I'm an executive here, but while I'm a board member, I show up like this. And that's really important to be able to communicate that. So just in summary, making sure that you have the right paperwork, you have the right narrative, and then taking it all the way through to really speaking to your network, looking at what's out there. There are obviously companies like ours that run you through that journey and support you along the way. But there are also, if you want to just get started by yourself, there are some very easy, pick up the phone, have a quick chat with somebody, perhaps your former boss, guarantee they sit on a couple of boards, and just start exploring.
That's
What would
awesome.
you say the differences? Sorry, Jen, I have one other question on
Yeah,
that. What
you're
would you
good.
say the differences between a board resume versus someone's regular resume? How does that look different?
Yeah, so they're very different. So I frequently say it's like, let's say you have a hobby. So let's say I play golf. My executive resume is going to be everything about me as an executive, my career. My golf profile would look very different, right? But it's still the same person. And actually, in my golf profile, I might have some information about who I am that is relevant to also my executive career. So think about it, rather than a resume like we think about our executive ones, think about it more as a profile. Who are you as a board member? So the main differences between these two: an executive resume is more a chronology of everything that you have done in the past and what you're doing today. The board resume is more about all the skills and qualities you bring to a board today and in the future. So it's less about looking back. It's more about looking forward. Yes, we look at your awards, your education. We look at your board roles. So if you've even been on a board of your homeowners association, right? It doesn't matter. Any kind of board environment or committee environment that you've been in, is really valuable for people to just understand that the board space and you have qualities of a board member. So really it's the look and feel. We tend to do a one-pager. We don't do more than one page. And it tends to also describe that person as a board director, not as an executive.
That's great. I love all this stuff. It's so informative. I don't know much about this. So one question I have though is, do you have to be a certain age to be on a board? Like, do they ever go to someone that's young, like 20, 25, 30, or is it something like more, after you've hit a certain age? Is there an age requirement, or do they only, take people on boards with a certain background or age? Or I know you talked about minorities, but what about age?
Yeah, so when I talk about boards, and when people talk about boards, frequently they're thinking of, the Walmart board or the IBM board, and there's thousands of different types of companies and millions of businesses in the United States that you can that you can look at. So on the nonprofit side, they have junior boards, So if you're in your 20s, you can join a board of a nonprofit. So look out for junior boards of some of the really big names. So I know some of the largest organizations have them because they want to give a chance, give the younger generation a chance to kind of get exposed to the board space. And then there's sort of, I guess, then again, you can industry boards, you could be in your 30s or 40s, you could jump onto those very easily. Advisory boards, I think it's really about whether you can bring the right advice. So we have placed nurses on boards. We've placed a dentist on a board. We also placed academics onto corporate boards. It's how you come across. So the nurse, as just an example, and I'll give you the example of the dentist because those might seem a little odd. The nurse is on a corporate board of an organization that is developing a new baby product. So she is a pediatric nurse. Perfect fit, right? A dentist went to sit on a corporate board of a company that is developing a new software channel for dentistries. So he brought and he ran many dentists. He had a whole, subsidiary, lots of subsidiaries of his own business. And he was kind of advising them on what, from the inside, what a dentist would need. So in both cases, perfect fit for a board. You don't want a board full of nurses or a board full of dentists. I mean, that's not essential for these types of businesses either, but to get that consumer and that information is really, really important. So there's a whole host of them. It's about really finding the right fit. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at some of the large publicly traded companies, there are age limits. So if you're a public company, it depends on the business, but the requirement is around 72 to 74 years of age as an outside board director. So if you're 69, 70 and you're considering going for a publicly traded company for the first time, it may be the wrong decision for you to make, and I might recommend you go for a private company instead. Private companies do not have age limits at all. They can create their own if they want to, if it's in their interest to do so, but it's not required by the SEC or NASDAQ or whoever. So public companies do have that. So yeah, generally no, it's really about how you present your value proposition, right?
Right.
But I'm laughing because the two people running for president would be too old to be on a board.
They would be. Yes, absolutely. They would be too old.
I think the other question a lot of our listeners are thinking or wondering, especially for someone like me, I'm thinking and wondering because I don't know much about boards, but so what is the money? Like, let's talk money. So you said you talked about pro bono and junior boards. So I'm assuming that's all volunteer, right? So what happens if you do work for a private board or a public traded company? How does that look as far as money?
Yeah, so some of the smaller startups will offer equity, and then some of them will offer equity plus a fee for the number of meetings that you attend per year. Advisory boards, which is, again, it's not a board of directors, but it can be advisory board of any business. Frequently that's cash. So, the amount, again, the number of meetings, or there's just an amount that you will get each month. Now, what that amount is, I mean, it can range from, $10,000 a year all the way up to $200,000 a year, right? It depends on the size of the company, what business they're in, what you're doing, and what value you bring. Publicly traded companies, which hopefully for the listeners here on the call, that is a goal of yours. Ultimately, let's get on those public companies because that's where the change needs to happen. But ultimately, some of those boards, it's, ExxonMobil, $500,000 to be on the board of ExxonMobil, plus equity, plus long-term incentive plans, etc. So, it shouldn't really be about the money, but what I think you're asking is, hey, this could be a career channel, essentially. Mm-hmm. Maybe we retire early, right? And we all sit on a few boards and a portfolio, we call it a portfolio of boards. And so that could be the ultimate goal. But yeah, that I think is probably give you a range, but public companies can also be on the very low end at $50,000 a year, something like that. But again, it's a progression, guys, right? It's starting get your experience, and then hopefully by that time you're in your 60s, you're on those portfolios, you're on multiple boards, and it can be quite lucrative. Yes.
That sounds
Yeah, I
like it's
think,
also, sorry, I was just going to say one more thing about,
no, go
you
ahead.
know, it sounds like it's also more about, what board you want to be on, what you're good fit at, what you can bring to the table, and how you can make a change in that industry. So it's not all about, I'm volunteering my time for this, but it's more of, you have a passion for that, or you want to make a change in that industry, or bring your expertise to the table to help that industry move forward, right? So it's not always about the money or the I'm volunteering and saying, that title of I'm on a board, right? You hear that sometimes, but it's more to it than that.
That's right. And I think if you show up to an interview for a board and you've got the impression of, I just want to get some money, they probably won't choose you. That'll come across in your, like, you won't be passionate. There won't be that motivation for building that business or getting behind that cause. So one of the first things I recommend is find out about what it takes to be a great board member. Is it for you? And then the second one is, what are the businesses or the organizations out there that you feel really passionate about? And if it's the first step you're taking, just get in, start working, and even some of the pro bono boards, it's not a lot of work, it really isn't. And the board meetings, the board information that you get beforehand is not like a public company. We hear from our members that public company board meetings can take a whole day to prepare. So reading the notes, reading the minutes, making sure you've got everything, you've got your questions, a nonprofit board would be a lot easier than that. So it really depends on the business. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's important. Mm-hmm.
What are some final tips you can give us if you're considering being on a board?
I think it's about changing your mindset. Advising is very different from, you've got to be a good negotiator, a good influencer. You've got to be able to work in a team and get your point across in the right way. Emotional intelligence is such an important characteristic of a board member. Now, don't get me wrong. There are arguments in the boardroom. There are people who don't get along, just human nature, right? It happens. But some of the best board members that get hired again and again and again have a real talent for being able to communicate their ideas and influence the board on a particular matter. And sometimes it's not just sitting there talking about it, but doing research, finding out about a particular problem, cybersecurity. How am I going to convince the board that they need to think about cybersecurity, right? It's not just about banging your fist on the board table and saying, hey, we need to think about this, but perhaps going out and saying, I found out about businesses similar to us who have actually shut down as a result of cybersecurity issues. So these are the reasons why we should have it on our meeting, on our agenda for our next meeting. So it's about really understanding how to deliver a message, how to work with others. And then I think I mentioned before, it's the people. A lot of it is about the people. Do you want to work with people around you? And some of the questions we've asked board members in the past, where we've said, what have been some of the best board experiences? Every time they say it's the people, nothing to do with the product, nothing to do with the industry. It's working with those people, both on the board and in the executive management team as well. So those are really important things to look out for.
That's great. Well, tell us where people can go to find more information and to work with you.
Yeah, so if anyone is keen to work or start and kick off their board career, we have consultants on hand, and they can do free consulting, just so have a quick conversation with our team to understand what it is that they need to be doing to get onto boards, and whether it's something we can help them with, or whether it's something that they can do on their own. Our website is www.intouchnetworks.com. And you just need to sign up there, put your name and email address and telephone number, and someone will give you a call. And like I said, it's just a consultation for you to understand the space and to see if it's right for you.
That sounds fantastic. Well, I learned a lot. I think it was very fascinating. I think this opened up a whole new world to a big group of people. I'm going to share it with a couple people that I know that'll be really helpful with. So remember to join us next time for another great podcast. Subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends and share it on your social media. And if you're looking to have your business write a book, contact us at Elite Online Publishing, where we guarantee we will work with you and market your book to become a #1 bestseller on Amazon. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.